before we, but I can tell you that the main thing behind the roadmap is, they're is adding gamification features and adding stuff to make it more.
I'm just trying to take notes of what is said.
Yep.
So go ahead.
Yeah. So it's mostly gamification related stuff, or preparing the platform for gamification related features. Meaning, like if you do so many lessons, there's a way to get credit for that, and and to keep track of what you've done and stuff like that. We're actually working with a third party to figure out exactly what the mechanics of that are, because it's not. It turns out that's not as doing that in a balanced way. That the intent of gamification is to get people more engrossed, right? To get people to be more involved, because they want to build their sort of reputation within that community. And it turns out that's more difficult to do than we had previously imagined. So we're working with the third-party company to try and put together a proposal for that, which we'll bring to this meeting as soon as we have that, and then we can tune and customize and all that stuff. The other thing is there's a lot of people who would like to contribute, but they don't want to run self-medicate, which I'm personally confused by. I really like self-medicate. I think it's a great way to iterate quickly over creating a lesson. But some people want to just do it online, like through the website. They want to have a way to develop lessons on the website itself. So again, there's the same third-party company is going to put a proposal on how to do that together for us. That's beyond, I think, Matt and I's ability to do well, because it requires a lot of JavaScript it requires a lot more JavaScript knowledge than we have to pull that off. So that's mainly what's on the roadmap. An in-browser editor for content and gamification. There's some other stuff around the actual security of the platform, and how breaking syringe into multiple containers and stuff like that, so that it's more scalable and it works better, and so on. But it's those are the two big things are what we just talked about. So, well, Matt, and that's a big document that he put together. It's like 12 pages of just text, and he'll, after he cleans that up, it should probably be like around 4 pages. And at that point, we'll post that on the community site, or on GitHub, and we'll go over that on this call in the future. However, it did occur to me that it'd probably be good if you guys had some input to the roadmap. You've played with the platform a little bit, and you've even kind of walked through the process of what it takes to create a lesson. So, do you have any thoughts on what you'd like to see in upcoming releases? And that it can be a new idea, or I don't know if you keep track of the GitHub issues. There's a number of tickets or issues that Matt has opened for features he'd like to implement. If you'd like to discuss any of those, or any issues you've opened, let's do it.
All right, I'm going to the GitHub here to refresh my memory.
So maybe I can just start with the one thing I'm most interested in at the moment, which is graphical display, like the VNC connection to the endpoints, which is more or less already on the roadmap and in issues. So I made, for the recall, I made a quick dirty hack that allowed to get a preview of what it could be. I guess it would probably require not so much effort from the backend, from Antidote and Syringe, but the most effort would be in the front end, because for usability purposes, doing SSH is not the same as clicking, drag and drop and stuff like that. So under the hood, there is Guacamole. Guacamole handles, in principle, a lot of those elements. But as it was done, as far as I understand, it was just a stripped down version. And probably either it would mean a lot of the original Guacamole application, web application would be needed, or another variant to better integrate with the Markdown and with other aspects of the interface. So I guess that's probably something that requires a lot of effort. But still, even with limited usability, already interesting for labs, like something that pops out of my mind is analyzing traffic with Wireshark or stuff like that, or maybe other graphical applications. Probably Brian can think about other tools. So that's the main thing I think that would make Antidote really generic.
Yeah, I think my my interests were more on the devices side. I'd like to see, and I know those issues are already opened under Shringe, but I'd like to definitely like to see the support for open source devices. So instead of just Napalm as a configuration tool, should be maybe Ansible or shell scripts that could also be supported, so that if I turn up a router that's running free range routing or something, I want to be able to have it configured automatically like a device, and I want to be able to build connections between it and other devices. I want to be able to build a network topology with 15 nodes, for example, in a fairly arbitrary way, and I want to have some routing devices in the middle of that, but then I also want to have multiple containers on the edge that would be running, maybe just simulating a host, maybe generating traffic, and we could just keep getting more complex. I mean, I'm trying to build a 5G core lab in the cloud here, just for work, and it'd be nice if I know that's a long way in the future for something like network reliability engineering, but the ability to do something that complex where one node is actually consisting of many VMs and all these applications are very complex. It'd be nice to put all that in there, and then you're teaching people how to run automation on something that's a little bit closer to the real world. I mean, we simplify these things down as much as we can, but it's still complex. And I'd like to be able to fit something like that in NRE Labs. But just starting with just different types of nodes for devices and different types of configuration tools to support them would go a long way to helping me get what I want to get done in NRE Labs.
Yeah. So the good news is there's a thing that there's actually for both of you. If I don't know if you've looked at the simplify endpoint abstraction issue that mirrored that Matt opened on Syringe on the Syringe repo.
Yes.
It's issue number 112, and there he I can tell you that he's almost actually done with this, and it might be in the next release. And it won't support VNC yet, but everything that needs to be in Syringe will be for VNC will be there, and you will be able to support multiple ways to configure devices that come up, inside the topology. Not just copying a config file, but you can actually you can just run a Python script. You can do something through Napalm, or you can do something in Ansible. And I think the next release should have that, or the release after that, and I'll get a status from him, and I'll update everyone on the channel. And I think there's something he needs to do for VNC on the front end. It's not simple. There's a couple things he has to change. which he hasn't gone over to any detail with me yet. So I don't think VNC will be supported in the next release, but I think the release after that is when we'll have VNC.
Yeah.
So I think I'm sorry, I'm just jumping in the middle here, Derek. So in case it hasn't already been mentioned, Matt will be back next week, and at that point, what we plan to do is kind of share the roadmap with the community and kind of talk through it, and if there are places where other folks besides Matt can help us move things along faster, then we can maybe possibly reprioritize some things and move things along.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brian, if you have some immediate thoughts on some other things you'd like to see as provisionable nodes, let me know. FRR is on our list. I can prioritize that and make a container, make it available through the images for you to use.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, but it won't really work until we can configure it, using something that starts up at the same time that device starts up. Like if we make it a device endpoint, Napalm won't configure it, and so it'll just be sitting there unconfigured.
Okay, well, I guess what I mean is when the simplified endpoint abstraction work is done, FRR should be when we release that stuff. FRR should be an image readily. FRR and Cumulus will both be images. Hopefully that'll be available in the repository.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like having some things in there that are standard really makes it easier for other people to get involved. They don't have to, like I'll be sitting here trying to figure out Docker unless someone like you puts it in there.
Yeah, Docker can be making the images can be is a little more painful than making the lessons.
Yeah. That said, on a roadmap, it would be like some hints or something more about how to make a compatible Docker container would be helpful, because I probably will take a shot at that eventually. And having some, I was looking at the documentation. There's really nothing there that helps me make a Docker container for NRE Labs right now.
Okay.
I guess what would be interesting, unless it changes a lot with the future configuration, but just to transfer some of the elements that are already in the slides or elsewhere to the documentation regarding configuration, regarding bits of syringe, the workflow of deployment of a node, or not a node, an endpoint at the moment.
Oh, like a probably with a good visualization too, right? That walks you through what is
Napalm, what is the process, what Kubernetes is doing while you wait for the deployment. Of course, it's not for end users, but for thinkers like us, I guess it's probably interesting. I had another element maybe for the roadmap, I guess, but it's probably coming quite soon. iframes. Iframes would be great to integrate any web application in the process. So it's almost done, almost fixable, but yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Review community raised issues is okay. So this is what I have. We'll close on the roadmap thing for now, and then we'll move on. But what we have is Overjix. I call you Overjix.
Go ahead.
VNC support, which I can tell you that's actively being worked on. That's part of that simplified endpoint abstraction issue. Support for other node types. I think that's two parts. One, the platform has to support it, and two, we need to actually create the Docker images. So the support for it is coming, and we can, if there's any initial, when that support is released, if there's any initial containers you'd like to see supported, FRR and Cumulus sounds like that'd be a good start. Anything, I mean, if you think of something else, please, just use chat or the forums, and we'll, and raise the point, and we'll add it to the list. Clear documentation and clear documentation on what exactly happens when you launch a lab and then it's ready to be consumed. Like, what are the sequence of steps and so on. And then support for iframes. Is there anything I missed there?
Oh, I think that's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah. That list will grow.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next agenda item is to review community raised issues. We kind of just talked about that issue, that mirrored gnome, the simplified abstraction endpoint abstraction one. There's quite a lot of text in that, so I would. Oh, it looks like yeah, there's that. Are there any issues that you guys have opened that that you'd like to discuss that haven't been closed out?
There's one technical thing. I just added it to an open issue that I already had. The issue about, let me go back and find it. Yeah, issue 113, potential bug. I think it's just another example of the same problem. When I created 2 utility devices connected to a VQFX device, so 2 utility containers connected to a VQFX device, they both got the same IP address. So I couldn't ping from one to the other because they both had this, their 2 IP addresses on the same network that were the same. And when I'm starting from a clean slate, it assigns different IP addresses. But after I've done a few scenarios where I've created and destroyed the same lab, they start getting the same IP address all the time. So that's probably some bug somewhere in the code.
Oh, I see that now. Okay, I will take a note of that. Yeah, that's an issue. That's yep. That's Matt. It's okay. Yep, I'll bring that up. It sounds like Matt is trying to also address this in that endpoint abstraction work he's doing.
That would be good. And maybe to add something extra to the roadmap is the ability to perhaps pick your IP address on those utility containers when you add an interface to them. So it's not just assigned by Antidote in general, because you may have your own particular idea about how you want your IP addresses laid out on your devices, and you're connecting a utility container to it to maybe just generate traffic or whatever. And if Antidote says, no, I'm just going to use 10.10. Whatever here, you're kind of stuck. So it'd be nice to just be able to say on that particular utility endpoint, I want this particular IP address. Because you can't change it. You can't go into the utility container and just go, IP address and change it, because it's locked down. You don't have sudo access, and so you can't set your IP addresses.
Okay, I'll
That's
so
okay. Go ahead.
So you should be able to get multiple interfaces on the Linux. I've done that. I've connected Linux boxes together. So I'm wondering what I'm going to try to. I'll recreate this, and then I'll let you know. I have connected 2 Linux boxes together, just using, without writing any code. I mean, just doing the lesson meta, and I'm wondering why it's doing that. That seems.
Yeah, like if you take 2 utility endpoints and you say, okay, I want a connection between them, it accepts it. You don't get an error, but those devices are not created. At least the interfaces are not created on the Linux containers. And so if you ping from one to the other, you're pinging over the management interface. You're not actually going across that second link that you created. And so that's what I observed. But if you connect them, to a device, to a VQFX device, then that link gets created properly. But then the problem is you can't pick your IP address on the Linux container, so you have to change your IP addresses in VQFX to match whatever Antidote is setting up on its own, because there's no option to tell it what IP address range you want to choose from or anything like that. And so you end up having to match what you think Antidote is going to assign to it.
I was thinking about one remark you made, Brian, about the lack of sudo or any other tool to change the IP inside a container or something like that. I guess for security reasons, it's probably good not to let so many open doors. But for debugging, it's probably hard to figure out what happens if you're not really familiar with Kubernetes and so on. So maybe it would make sense to think about the endpoint images to try and add some debugging facilities, I'm not sure, but I think when I tried to use VNC, to add VNC in an image, I finally added something like supervisor inside to make sure that services can start and so on. But I'm not really an expert in container fabrication, so I don't know. Maybe there are good reasons for not to add too many things and keep containers minimal. On the other hand, those pods pretty much look like VMs if there are nodes on a network and you add applications on them. So I'm not completely sure what needs to be inside the basic, the default images.
So, Brian, if you go into, I'll post this link actually. This is the, this needs to change, by the way, but right now this is how the IP address is set for like the lesson that I made with the Asterisk PBX. I'll put it in chat here. That launch.sh is referenced inside the Docker file, and and the thing is, when you reference that from Docker, from the Docker file, it's run as root. So on boot, you can reference this launch script and then change the address to what makes sense.
Right, I could make, so that gets, and then if we had some good directions on the website about how to do this, particularly for somebody that's not very comfortable with Docker, then yeah, you could do that. That could become your configuration. You just basically pull down that Docker image, have your own Docker file that sets the IP addresses and does whatever else you want to add to that Docker image. And now you've got your own image based on something that NRE Labs provided. But I don't know how to do that right now. So, but 10% into a Docker book, so maybe I'll get there eventually.
I'll go over this with you after the call too.
You could have a lesson about building a Docker image.
Yeah, that would probably be that would probably be good.
Yeah, you can get really meta. Sure
it's visible inside the standard Linux container. Why not?
Okay, but yeah, we need documentation on how to make Docker containers, and it is changing with this simplified endpoint abstraction part because it's the case that you'll want. The thing is, if you reuse this asterisk container for any other lesson, you're going to end up with the same IP address as the one I chose for my lesson. And if you changed it inside of this directory, it would break my lesson. So we have to, so Matt knows this. So that's part of that, again, that simplified endpoint abstractions work that he's doing. So you can have a different configuration, you know, you can reuse that utility without modifying this base image, that the base Docker file that's in the repository. But I'll show you how this works. I'll make time to show you how this works.
Okay, great.
Um, okay, Ulrich, did you have any issues that you wanted to talk about?
Not really. I was just having a look at the number of forks of Henry Lab's curriculum. I see 37 forks on GitHub. And I wonder if you talked to all those people, or why did they fork it, and was there any pull request that resulted from those forks and so on?
So yes, some of those people we talked to because we know them. When people ask us how to develop lessons, the first thing we tell them to do is to fork the curriculum, and then to work against their fork and then do pull requests from their fork, which you know go upstream. So that's why all those people are forking the curriculum. Probably half of them are people, a little more than half of them are people that we know who they are. We've talked to them, and we've encouraged them to do exactly that. And then there's a bunch of people who have forked it, and I don't know why. We don't know who they are or why they did that. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that's a interesting question actually, because would that be normal? I mean, how would we reach out to them? We would have to.
No, I was just curious if you look at the names, and but if you tell me that some of them or most of them you know, then so fine. That's
Probably half of them that we're familiar with.
yeah.
We talked about this before. There's several people that like you said, that we're not really sure we're not sure who they are, why they forked it, but they heard about us and they forked it. They forked, like some of these, they forked every single repository as soon as they heard about it.
Yeah.
Some people just do that, but it's not a what is it called? There's two kinds of forks, right? There's a fork that's still connected upstream, and that's okay. A lot of people do that, and then they do work against the fork, and then their pull requests go upstream. And then there's, I think, well, I don't know what the term is. I think it's like hard fork, or it's a clean fork or something like that. And that's when they, what's that?
Detached.
Detached fork. And yes, I think that's the technical term for it. And that's when, I think you're right. I think it's detached fork. And that's when people do that because they intend to take what you have and start a new project from that point with it. And I don't think I'm not aware of, I don't think that's happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so so we have a couple issues here from that Brian's raised, and we'll make sure we get those addressed as soon as Matt gets back. He's PTO right now. In fact, he's so PTO that he left his phone behind and he has no laptop. So he's like living like a caveman, I guess. Hopefully he is. That can be a refreshing experience. So the next thing is Lisa is going to talk to you about some marketing and organizational stuff. Lisa, are you there? You're on mute.
Cheese time, Lisa. Cheese.
Cheese time?
She's fond of cheese, it seems. Maybe I shouldn't.
All right, sorry, I'm on the road right now, so I had to pull off. All right, so First things first, I wanted to thank Olivier for raising the question of licensing for the lessons. I did take that to legal people who know more about licensing than I do, and they agreed that CC BY would make a lot more sense for the lessons. The platform remains as it is. But so they're going through the process of converting that license on the lesson side to CC BY. So thank you for that. Let's see. On the marketing front, and again, Olivier has sort of seen an early preview of this. I am in the process of putting together a sort of, quasi-standard deck that, eventually anybody in the community can use if they want to go give talks, either sort of to the general public or to potential contributors about what NRE Labs is and why you should contribute and how to contribute and things like that. So I'm hoping to have that done in the next couple of weeks. And I'll share that with this group at that time. We can go through it and, talk through it, take any recommendations, make any revisions that the group thinks are useful, and then we'll post it and share it on the community site. Let's see, what else do I have on the agenda, Derek?
You have release naming, branding, and sponsorship packages.
Okay, so release naming. We need to take a look at the sort of what makes sense from a roadmap standpoint, but we think we're reasonably close to a sort of a respectable public release, and so we were thinking kind of late July, early August, depending on kind of where the next release falls, that we'd like to make that kind of a public launch. As much as anything else, to kind of put a stake in the ground and say, yes, here we are, and help drive a little bit of awareness around both the release and the community and so forth. Part of that means that we need to do some work on the website itself to kind of, we have a bunch of different properties in a bunch of different places. And we kind of need to bring them all together so people can, sort of move from one area to another more easily. And so that's kind of what needs to happen from a branding perspective. But the other thing, and this is always a favorite topic of conversation in in open source communities, but and in proprietary companies as well, is coming up with a theme for release names. One thought that's been suggested actually is, given that the name of the platform is Antidote, we can have release names themed around medicine, medical discoveries, antidotes to real and imagined illnesses, anything from mercury to ground unicorn horn to whatever. So I wanted to check in with this group to see if anybody had any thoughts or strong feelings, or if I should just put together a list of proposed names and we could talk about it next time.
I would vote for deadly diseases.
Deadly diseases. We actually talked about that as well. We were thinking about having Ebola be our first release.
Yeah, but before 1.0. After 1.0, we can think about medication. But
medication, okay.
I think you're going to get deadly diseases. You're going to get somebody whose favorite uncle died of something, give you a call and tell you how insensitive you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we were thinking about medieval diseases.
Like the fake diseases that they thought were really diseases.
Oh, that is
yeah,
actually that's a genius idea, and I like that.
Yeah.
There's lots of those, isn't there?
there must be, all these crazy things, more leeches, all these things that they used to do. So there must be some, diseases that were not really diseases, that would be probably a friendlier thing.
So I was talking to somebody who researches medieval Chinese medicine, and among other things, she mentioned that milk boiled with Indian long pepper was thought to be a cure for diarrhea. So milk could be an antidote.
There you go.
Well, I
And
mean,
she sent me a whole long list of traditional medieval cures from that part of the world. So that was kind of fun. I can go through that as well. So I can, if people like the idea of a medical theme or medical discoverers as well, then I can put together a couple of lists and share them either next meeting or the following one.
Okay, that sounds cool.
Okay. And if you guys have fun suggestions, just drop me a line and let me know, and I'll add it to the list.
Okay.
Okay, and then sponsorships. It sounds like Derek had talked about this a little bit already. So we have some interest from Cumulus about helping co-sponsor potentially, and while it's not a great need now, as we grow both the platform as well as contributors as well as users, hosting costs will go up. And at some point, we may want to, be at events and things like this. We do also, again, as I mentioned, need to do a fair amount of work on the front end in terms of both, sort of look and feel unifying things, but also just there are probably some things we need to do from a sort of front end engineering standpoint as well. And that will cost some money. And so, sort of those are all kind of things that, are out there that it would be great to have some public support for. We are looking at how we put together a sponsorship package or a series of packages, and it could be anything from, sort of individual donations of, $5 to $100, to sort of recurring monthly contributions from an organization. And then how we sort of handle that from a structural standpoint. At some point, once we have sponsors, we will also need to talk about governance. So I don't have anything more definitive to say than that at this point. But I just kind of wanted to put that on people's radars, that we are going to need to start thinking about sort of financial and legal structures and governance and things like that in the not too distant future. And if you have favorite models that you have seen work well with other projects, again, let me know. And I'm very open to all suggestions that are going to work for the community. So
yeah. I don't have any experience with governance, but I was just thinking about, you mentioned, costs and things, and I was just thinking, you probably should have some guidance or some rules in the project for how big or how many resources a lab can take up, because, if nobody's paying for it, they could easily create a very large lab that actually costs a lot to run while it's running.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. That actually is maybe something that we could actually explicitly tie to, sponsor a lab of this size.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, that might be a way to kind of size things. I like that. That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
About sponsorship, maybe I was thinking about maybe possibilities for students to get enrolled somehow, like the Google Smart Code or other such initiatives. So I don't know, but I think for me, for instance, we have probably students that could be interested, although it's always hard to make such a stage count for their scholarship. But I don't know if you have schools that could be interested, maybe closer in the US or Canada, for instance.
For schools for, I'm sorry,
Like
to,
internship contributions. Somehow, some students in networking, in um, contributing lessons, testing stuff, improving the platform. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And are you thinking that they would be? I'm not clear if this is tied to the sponsorship question or just a separate idea.
Because sometimes there is a grant for the internship, something like
Okay.
the Google Summer of Code, for instance. I think it used to be $5,000 for a summer, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like if you have a professor that has some grad students working for them,
Yep.
if you reach, if you make bridges with academic institutions,
Yep.
they have a lot of resources they can apply to anything they want because they can do anything they want with those students.
Right. Right. Okay.
Not mine.
My brother's a professor, so I know how it works.
Yeah. No. Very good point. Okay. I know we're coming up to the top of the hour. Any other thoughts that we should include? Make sure that we document today.
I can't think of anything.
All right. Well, this has been, at least for the part that I've been on, this has been a really good discussion. So thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And Derek.
yeah, thank you so much for attending. I mean, it was, I like talking to you guys. So it was good. This was a good first call. I've taken some notes. I'll
maybe something that I would like to bring someday is kind of European participation. Just to think about, is there a sub community in Europe where we could have some real life meetups or something like that? So maybe that's something I would like to see discussed someday.
Okay. Derek, since you're actually at a computer, can you just add that to the agenda for next time, just right now, so that we don't forget?
Yeah, in real life meetups for NRE Labs. Yeah, I'll put that on there. So do you know who David G is by chance? He's in the UK. He works for Juniper. He's on Twitter. He's well known in the social media sphere, and he's also a coder. He's done a lot of open source work. He actually runs an NRE and a network reliable engineering meetup that meets.
I think he goes between London and Ireland.
A year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's between London and Ireland. I know that's not local.
It's probably in terms of time zones and stuff like that. I mean, if you have a community of people that like me are more on Discord in Europe, Paris time or UK time, it looks like it's a bit empty. Maybe it's different at night for us and a day for Liza. So I don't know. It was just some kind of IRL and also maybe some time zone stuff.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so actually, I'll add something before we close out. That the meetups are something that they've been on our radar for a little while, and if you wanted to have a meetup, as a community member, I would actually kind of lean on you to help put that together. You probably know more network engineers, more automation-minded DevOps and automation-minded people in your area or in the Central European area than I certainly do. And if you need help organizing that, we can be of great assistance for that. And of course, we can co-sponsor that. and either Matt or I can even attend the, at least the first one, to kick that off. So, let's actually work together and see if we can make that happen. That would be really cool, actually, if we could do that. And same with in Ottawa. I don't know. Actually, I'm not familiar with Ottawa. Isn't that kind of northish?
It's probably around the same latitude as where you are if you're in Wisconsin. But it's it's definitely northish. It's about 100 miles north of the border with the U.S.
Okay. I don't know how. I know that the population in Canada is concentrated along the border. Would you have to drive to do a meetup if we did
Ottawa's
one?
a big city, Derek.
Is it? I don't know. Okay.
There's a million people in the area, and I've noticed, like, I've been looking around for Linux meetups and things like that. They get started and they tend to peter out. We used to have a Linux user group here that kind of petered out. So we're a million people, and things start up. I don't think we've really got something that's running full blast. There's a couple of government-sponsored institutions here. I can't remember what they stand for, but there's CENGN and a few others.
Oh, Sunjin, yeah.
Yeah, and they're pushing a lot of meetups around open source networking and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, I think if I don't have their couple of contacts there, I can get them very easily. So.
Okay.
That sounds promising. Okay. So what was the name of that?
Sengen, CENGN. It's an acronym.
Sengen, CENGN.
Yeah.
Yeah, those meetups are, I think that'd be a great idea, and plus that would give me a reason to fly out to France, for sure. to the he lives on a street. I think it translates to Street of the Wolf Breach.
Yeah. So I can't promise you will see around, but who knows?
Right, so I'm going to have to drop this. But thank you again, and I look forward to talking to you next week.
Okay, thanks, Lisa.
Thanks,
And
Fox.
we're gonna. Say that again. Sorry.
I was just thinking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if there's anything else that you guys can think of off the top of your head.
Nope.
Okay, then we'll wrap up. I took notes. I'll actually I'm going to create a category on the community site. It's like wiki posts, and they're basically posts that anyone can edit. So I'll put the notes that I have here into a wiki post, and if you guys want to or if anyone wants to edit it or add any content, then they should be able to edit that post.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
Admin. Yeah, I'll figure that out, and then that way you guys will be able to edit that. Yeah. Okay. So actually, both of you are going to get loot boxes, and thank you for thank you for contributing and for attending the meeting. We'll actually have some community roles that I imagine will emerge. So keep that in mind if if this is something that you're interested in. As the governance docs and all those other things flesh out, we'll have to have people sort of assigned to different roles, and we'll obviously, since you're here in the beginning and you're motivated, we'll definitely be asking you to take one of those roles maybe. So
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll have a look at that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a full-time job or anything. But okay, with that, I think we'll call it done, and we're gonna do this every week. I believe we're gonna do this every single week, and as well as our live stream. And actually, Matt will be back next week. Overjix, would you mind coming on the stream? Do you think that'd be possible?
I will be in Dublin, so my agenda will be quite full or
Well,
not. I don't know. So
later day.
maybe later. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll see. I don't know, but I plan to introduce people to Antidote at least a bit, but I'm not sure they're interested in networking and stuff. So we'll see. Maybe by chance I can make a few connections with local Dublin people or other people that get us to this meeting. So we'll see.
Okay, sounds good.
So bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Okay, bye. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.